Carabelas en azul, mar de Marco Polo y de Simbad, a la tierra oriental del Preste Juan. Como caballero medieval, cada navegante cree ser Amadís de Gaula, Febo, Floricel. Que confundiste Calicut con las verdes costas del Brasil y abrazaste al nuevo mundo por error. Tú que contemplaste mar azul, el momento histórico crucial de Colón pisando tierra occidental. Cuéntame de aquellos indios que su piedad hasta Florida llevaron para salvar al náufrago Núñez, cabeza de vaca, el curandero fiel, hijo de mar. Y de Cristóbal de Oliv cuando contempló, alucinado por las sergas de Esplandián, la tierra misteriosa, isla de las Amazonas. Cuéntame, mar, ¿qué pasó?
Y la eterna juventud. Hi there, how's it going? Antipodas. Oh, no camera. There you go. Gonna have a little bit of dust. Antipodas is the name of the song, the band, and the album. Yeah, all those things are Antipodas. Pretty good song. I really like it. Maybe I guess it's my favorite of them. I also like the first one, Ronda. That's actually from. It's a band from a brother, the brother of the musician that does the soundtrack for my game. That's my connection with that song. Anyway, today I'm going to do the live commentary on the TIS. We'll see how it goes. Little disclaimer right here. Just small disclaimer. The internet, it's been a little bit unstable, but it got more stable right now. It should be alright, although there might be frames drop somewhere in during the run, and if that happens, I'm just gonna ignore it. By the way, like I'm doing a local recording. Will be on YouTube regardless, with all the quality you want and no frames drop. So I'm just gonna ignore if the stream doesn't go that crazy, and I'm going to just continue the commentary as normal, okay? So just that little disclaimer. And with that, I think we can just go for it. I have my splits here. Okay. So, let's start with it. Let's go into it. I need to open Dolphin, everything from scratch, so my recording, so OBS recognizes. All right, let's go. Wait. Should be this one. No CS. There you go.
Deep into that darkness.
Okay, so this is a TIS for any percent, which is like we normally call just any percent this category because it's the main category, but the real name is any percent no cutscene storage because of the difference between whether we allow or not that very broken glitch. It's like so broken that we need to separate categories. But this is the main category. This is the category people run normally. And well, we're gonna see the amount of stuff we can do on this category. There's, if you watch my war record, there is like a lot of stuff that is not present there. Here I'm just chilling here on Alex. I got a sidestep there, kind of a moonwalk. You can kind of do a moonwalk on this part. That was just for stylish. There's really nothing we can do there to speed up the fight, as far as we know. So you notice the splits here. These splits aren't from my PV. These are actually from my Japanese PV, which is like a minute behind, or like a minute and a half. I don't exactly remember. PV is 1 hour 37, and this Japanese PV that I have on the splits is 1 hour 38. And I'm comparing to this just because it's what I have from the Japanese. I could just time this blindly, but it's a little bit more fun to do it against a real run, like an actual human run. It's just more fun. So yeah, first things first, I'm doing this on Japanese, which is not actually the fastest version for 80%. The fastest version is Korean by a slight bit. it should be like 6 seconds faster than Japanese. But those two are fairly similar. But I just decided to do it in Japanese to compare to my Japanese run, and to just have a TIS on Japanese because it's, I don't know, like if I do another TIS on the future, it's probably gonna happen on Korean. And then, so we'll have like different TISs on different versions, just to show the versions, because why not? So like the main difference between the versions is like, first of all, there's language, but language doesn't make that much of a difference. There's like 1 second. I think Japanese is like 1 second behind in the last routing I did, which is kind of weird, but it's just because of how the text boxes work. And then Korean should be like 6 seconds ahead of all the other versions in language. Korean is actually on English, but it has a different formatting on the text that gives less lines on a lot of text boxes. But yeah, the real big reason, well, there's another difference that we're gonna see on Anthony later, but when that happens, I'm gonna bring that up. The other main difference between versions is the fact that they load at different speeds. So Japanese and Korean have slightly faster loading time, and that helps for all the in-game cutscenes. They load a little bit faster. And on the other hand, in-game pre-rendered cutscenes load a little bit slower. But if you do all the math at the end, there's like way too many in-game cutscenes, you know, so those versions end up saving time. So we're going Oyath because it's officially the fastest artifact path. And by the way, you notice a time loss there. We're gonna have some of those because
I cannot say what was the true beginning.
Emulator is lower than console. Okay, so even while this is the fastest human possible way to beat the game, there is the factor of playing on emulator, and that's gonna come on the time. So the time won't be completely accurate at the end compared to console, let's say, but it still gives us an idea, you know, because we're gonna be saving time regardless, even with slower loading time. So it gives us a rough idea of the time saved, but not an actual idea. So here we're gonna let this guy one hit from dead. We pause there to recover movement, and then we kill it, and that way we trigger the zombie cutscene, and it merges with the other cutscene, and that saves a tiny bit of time. It saves like 2 seconds. So then just we keep going on Elia. There's some sneaking patterns. I'm using the RTA sneaking patterns. I didn't went for any fancy sneaking patterns because there is others, but I just decided to stick with the RTS ones to keep it as similar as possible to humans. And here there's a new trick, which it will be on runs, but just not on any PvE yet. So we do the same trick here. We get this and kill the zombie, and this allows us to move closer to this door right before that starts. And you see Elia turn it invisible, and she's actually stuck there, but we can watch a pre-render cutscene to recover movement, or rather recover B-prompts, and then with the B-prompt we recover movement, and then we can access the door before the cutscene ends, because if the cutscene ends, you get to the next cutscene and you just lose all that time, and that saves a little bit. And also it has the funny consequence of having an invisible area, which is pretty cool. There's actually a different version of that strat, which is actually faster, but I was kind of out of practice of it. I wasn't doing it too much, so I decided to not do it, even while it's probably the most optimal. There might be some of those things. This run, even what is like a theory human run, it still has the human element. It's because I just did it on one day, and I just wanted kind of a run with all or most of the new stuff. So yeah, by the way, the whole idea of the human restricted TAS is that you want to see the best a human can do. So more sneaking patterns here for stamina. When you run out of stamina, running out of stamina is actually pretty bad, because like every time you walk, you recover stamina, and if you sneak or stand up, you recover stamina at double speed. But if you go into low stamina and you get tired, you actually recover stamina slower on both running, walking or sneaking. So it's always bad to go tired. And that's why we have these sneaking patterns all over the game to manage stamina. There's other parts where later in the game we can start using recoveries. Chaturga recovery doesn't just recover HP, it also recovers full stamina. And there's also the Chaturga pool, which grants you full stamina like every 40 seconds, I think. Like every 40 seconds you recover full stamina. Is like essentially infinite stamina. Okay, that was a little bit late on the split, but it's fine. And I don't quite remember how good was my PV on Japanese. I mean, I can see the time there, but I don't remember how different parts are better or worse than others. So there's a scroll trick there. We avoid scrolling down in the item by scrolling in the book. And there's a fast pickup there on the Gladius.
From my research,
If you interrupt the camera movement towards the Gladius with Alex position, there's like a very finicky spot there where you get an insta snap into the Gladius. And because basically when the camera is panning towards an item, you cannot press B. And we avoid that with the insta snap.
This devil's work. We should get out of here.
you have proven what we have feared the most.
So something about the Human Restricted TAS. I actually did all of this by hand, except for just a couple tricks, which means I did all of this with save state. I barely use any frame advance, but again, there's some exceptions because there's a couple of frames that are frame perfect, a couple of tricks that are frame perfect, and I did use frame advance on those. But on a lot of parts, or most of the run, I try to just optimize every segment with save states to keep it as human as possible, to kind of have like a sum of best run if you want. So compared to my PV, Anthony will have, I think, about 2 changes. more or less. There's like a little change adjustment on earn skip, which you're gonna see in a couple minutes. So here we damage the head of this zombie, which defeats the zombie, quote unquote, and then if we defeat the head again, we're gonna kill the zombie. And that allows you to like defeat it and get the rune without having to finish it. Here we're getting a two-edged sword. That's just because that sword helps too much on an incoming battle, and also later on in the run in Paul chapter. Then there, you kill the zombie and open the door at the same time, and that allows you to get the rune whilst in the transition. It saves a tiny bit of time. It's not that much really. It might be like 0.5 seconds. Probably no more than that. So this is the adjustment. We do this part with the Scrammas axe. It's a neutral attack on the Scrammas axe to move the zombie. And then I use the blue urn for that part. So that little trick, the breaking the blue urn right there, at the same time the zombie is hitting you, allows you to bypass the trigger of the next cutscene. And then you can do an enchantment on that trigger, like right before the cutscene starts, let's say, and that allows you to move in the cutscene. And yeah, you can just access the door. And you see here, this fight, we didn't cut the arm of the bishop. That's because we are in Japanese. On Japanese, you cannot cut limbs of humans, human characters, like let's call it, even while the bishop isn't really a human, but you know, it's human-like character. We believe it was a censorship of this version, this and Korean, and it actually has an advantage, and that's that it only takes 3 hits to kill it, while on the other version, on US, we had to cut 2 arms to kill it, and every arm takes 2 hits. So they buffed the arm HP, but they nerfed the overall HP of the bishop. I mean, the HP is the same, but when you defeat the arm, it kills him immediately. So it's like 1 hit faster. Then here we're going to inspect this to recover animation while doing B prompts. Then we store a B prompt there. We did an attack into the trigger of the horror, and then open the B prompt while doing the attack. So Anthony will finish the attack during the B prompt, and that way we're gonna go farther away from the trigger and won't activate it. Like after the attack and after the B prompt, we're farther away from the trigger, so we just skip it. So now we're gonna go to Kareem. A lot of the Alex segments look quite the same at the beginning. There is some finicky movement on the passage, getting outside of the tome room. I didn't optimize that at all, but I went for relatively good movement. Like movement that is hard to get in a run, let's say, but it's like so unoptimized compared to a real TAS, of course.
Psychology of
So Kareem is one of the most entertaining chapters, I always say this, on speedrun. Because of all the fighting sequences. And like, this is definitely a chapter where you have to get some more APM, let's call it, on Eternal Darkness. Whereas there are other chapters where there's a lot of running, like Paul, for instance. On this one, there's running, of course, but there's also a lot of fight. Here, we're gonna make this zombie sink, because that makes that counts as defeating the zombie, and then the game gives you the rune instantly. And you notice I'm like punching a lot of doors and ladders and transitions. That's to avoid a turn around the next room. So we are actually facing towards the center of the room. And here, we're gonna cast an enchant item right as we get into the bottom cutscene. That's a frame perfect trick. And also allows you to move on during that cutscene, which doesn't save a lot, because you still have to wait for the cutscene to end before you can take the elevator. But it does a little bit. It does help a little bit. But the main time save of this is that we have an enchanted toolware, which is gonna make some fights faster. Like this one right here, with the horror. So we normally go for the body on this fight, but with Enchanted Toolware we can go for the heads. So we leave this horror about to die. It's one chakram away from death. So then we can finish it up with a chakram and get the rune on the transition. Then I do a recovery here, while at the same time I enter that trigger, which is frame perfect too. And that's only frame perfect because on the same pause I'm putting the toolware, I'm equipping the toolware. Another recovery here. This one is just for show off. You only need one before the round now. But I just did two because it's, you know, the TAS. That second one is actually way easier. It's like 6 frames instead of the other 1 frame. So this is the first instance of the cinematic glitch. We can use cinematics to get rid of a lot of stuff in rooms. One of those things is we can wipe out all the enemies that are on finishing state, you know? Like all the zombies that were about to die. Yo, Barik! Welcome to the stream. Thank you for coming. So here, for instance, if you don't get Enchanted Gladius, you have to kill these enemies with Ramdao, which is slightly slower. Then here, we get a no magic message into this cutscene, and then with the no magic message, you can trigger a pause later to gain movement during the cutscene, and that allows you to kill the enemies in the cutscene, and allows for a very fast fight on this part. And that's quite difficult because you don't have access to the camera. So the movement is kind of tricky. And then we merged 2 cutscenes there on the enchantment and the door opening. So yeah, Karim is one of those chapters that have a lot of those moving out of the camera. And remember, this game doesn't have time controls, which means if the camera is fucked up, your controllers will be fucked up. So you have to memorize directions and angles on your control stick to don't get lost. Here the enchanted tower is gonna last a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter for this fight, since these zombies already die on one hit of the tower. And here you see I'm not watching a cutscene, we timed this. It's faster to just kill them with chakrams. They disappear faster than if you kill them with towers. And we also need them to don't die all at the same time, so we can trigger a faster fight later. Because there's like a sequence we have to do here. And so these guys are going to explode. There you go. And then we're going to make explode the next horde right here. And these ones will disappear with a cutscene, because it's slightly faster. It's like 2 seconds faster to watch a cutscene. And all that sequence was done in such a way that we get the quickest horror we can. Because for this fight, the only thing that matters is to kill the horror. But the thing is that the horror is the last mob that will appear. So we're going to make the horror disappear. That saves a little bit of time. Then a no magic message into a pause, into a pre-rendered cutscene to gain movement in the cutscene. And then inside the cutscene, you can grab the artifact immediately. The only thing you gotta do is like, you have to do all these outside of the BPROM area. So then you can get inside of it and you see the BPROM popping. If you do it from the inside, the BPROM won't pop. So you need a tiny bit of you need a tiny bit of, let's say, movement in inside the cutscene. Thank you for the host, Barik. So now, outside of Kareem, we're going to go for Max. So you're gonna see scroll trick here again. We scroll back and forth in pages, so we avoid reading the entire text box, because the text boxes are actually slower on Japanese most of the time than on US. But since we have the scroll trick, at the end they all take about the same time. The only version that doesn't benefit from scroll tricks is Korean, because the text is like so little. And also, I think Italian on PAL. I don't remember correctly. Is either Italian or Spanish that has some faster text boxes on items, just on items. So here, Max, there is a trick that we already set up a little bit on this horror. We're going to kill this horror and get the rune. At the same time, we open a door to get on the transition, just like the other runes. But the fact that that trick works or not depends on your movement on the first time you're on this room, because it depends on where the servant is. And if you're either too slow, like if you're too slow, you're not gonna get it, but there is some safe strats to get it always. And it's like a very tricky thing, because the servant actually gets teleported to a fixed spot, but what matters is in what part of his animation he is in, because that kind of affects the angle he's gonna get, because he walks a little bit before he gets into the frightened position, you know? And that only depends on the angle he got previously, or rather the animation. So here we're gonna spend some magic and do an enchant right in the trigger. That's frame perfect. We wasted magic to get a no magic message and a pause to move just a tiny bit on that little cutscene. And like the most important part about that is that we get the enchantment, because that makes the fight faster, and if we can get it on a cutscene, that's much better. So some assignments here. We did a scroll trick there, by the way. Then just the normal reveal, and you see I'm reloading the gun while I do spells. You can reload the gun and then do a spell, and it will finish the reload without canceling the spell. That's the only weapons that can do that are flintlock pistols and the crossbow on Paul and Roberto. The other guns don't actually load. You get like half of the animation. We got another run in a transition there on the door, ladder rather. And here the same. Waste some magic. Do an enchant here, no magic message, into reloading the weapons. Which saves a tiny bit of time because we finish the reload. We start the reload in the cutscene. And we also, this enchantment saves 1 bullet on this fight, the incoming fight. Because with the Uyao enchantment, this takes 5 hits, but with Selja it takes 4, which is pretty fast. And we're going to get an extremely good teleport on this, just because it's a TAS. And this is a new little strat I had, which is going backwards a little bit, just to gain more height. Because otherwise you had to walk like a little bit more close to the Guardian. And that's just because of how the Guardian hitbox is. Like, you shoot as soon as the fight starts, then your second shot will not make it, because the Guardian, the hitbox of the Guardian is going a little bit down because of the animation of it. So your shot will actually land on the stairs. So you need to either get closer to the Guardian or just wait for it to level up, to rise the hitbox, or you can gain some height on the stairs. So now we're going to Lindsay. Maybe the hardest episode on RTA. We're doing some assignments first. That's a damage field.
Influence was incredible.
Damage field was thought to be the most useless spell in the game. It was one of those spells that we didn't make even on like the oldest roads of the game, because it's just too slow. It's like a handy spell, but it's just too slow, and it doesn't really help anywhere for fights or things like that. But it has a very interesting property, which is it's basically a portable wall that you can move anywhere you want. So there is another thing that has a collision similar to a wall, and that's enemies. So if we can like put walls and enemies wherever we want, we can do some very tricky and funny things. And you're gonna see what we're gonna do here. So we get the damage from the gatekeeper to summon a zombie, kill it, recover some sanity. We need this zombie. There's some manipulation there to make it walk towards you. Then we get a damage field. We get grabbed by the zombie, and then when you get rid of the grab, because there is a wall there and we are in like a very tight spot, when you get rid of the grab, the zombie pushes you. Like the wall pushes the zombie pushes you into the wall, and that way we skip the bronze door. It's one of the hardest tricks in the game, by the way. And here we do the same with the silver door. This one is way easier. It's still hard, but way easier than the other. Because it has kind of a very consistent setup. That's the good thing about that one. Here, I just run out of stamina, so I did a recovery there. And remember, Chaturga recoveries give you stamina back. Something important on this chapter is that... Sorry. I have recovery explosion activated. That was actually a mistake I got on the TAS, but I figured out too late in the run, so I just decided to keep it, whatever. It doesn't alter too much. I'm gonna tell you later what it does. So here, enchant item on the button. That one is frame perfect, and sometimes it's even impossible. If you get a bad angle, it's a 0 frame window and it's impossible to get. But if you get it, you can move in the cutscene and you can cast spells too. So I actually recover my sanity here. And the good thing about that is that we don't want to go into, like, if we go into less than half of the sanity, we can trigger explosion, which is a sanity effect that you explode when you do a recovery. That means you cannot recover because you're gonna lose time, and also if you get an explosion, you cannot get another one on the rest of your playthrough. We need the explosion because we're going to use that a lot for another exploit that I guess I can cover on Paul, just not yet. Oh, maybe at the end of this chapter, I guess. We use it a little bit there. So explosion gets activated at some point in the game after having a sanity effect. My explosion got activated on Kareem, and here, okay, so there's a recovery there, no explosion because I have more than 50% sanity. But on the next one, I actually need to sneak. I can't do a recovery because explosion is already active. There is a way to don't get it active here, but again, like I said, that was a mistake from me. It's just a couple second time loss, it's not that big. So there's a little bit of sneak here because of that. So then just avoiding the traps. And I need to sneak some more here. Normally you would do a recovery here if you don't get explosion. Like around the zombie you can do a recovery. And around on this room, somewhat in the middle of this room, you're gonna get your first sanity effect on Lindsay. And we can avoid that. Let's see if I cast a recovery. Yeah, there you go. So you don't saw me casting anything, but you saw the magic meter. I actually casted a recovery there, and that allows you to skip sanity effects because the next sanity effect is assigned to be explosion, and it replaces the previous sanity effect you were assigned to have on the next room. And that's why explosion is so important, and you need to have it activate. And like you don't want to lose it. That's like the worst thing it can happen, that you lose explosion in a run, because explosion is what allows us to avoid every single sanity effect on the game. Well, not every single one, but almost everything. So there's like little RNG. There used to be a lot of RNG on this run because of sanity effects. There's a little patch there. You see I was stuck like a second with black bars. That's actually a patch the developers did I guess the localization group, probably. And that's to prevent a known glitch that if you save and load on that place right after the cutscene, then you're gonna get stuck on Lindsay forever because the door doesn't open. You can get that on US and PAL, but not on Japanese or Korean. Unless you force a pause during the black bars, but you can only do that while hacking. So I also doing recoveries here on pretty much every room. You see my magic going down a little bit. Every time you see that, it's a recovery that I'm canceling instantly to avoid sanity effects. Because from Lindsay, after Lindsay, you can start having sanity effects on Alex. And we go to Paul. There is a lot of walking in Paul, but there is also a couple of tricks that are kind of interesting. One of them is also one of the hardest of the entire run. It's frame perfect and not exactly position perfect, but it's position dependent, let's call it. Like if you don't get a good position, even if you got the frame, the trick won't work properly. So it's a hard trick. And it took me a lot to get it on the run, actually, even with TAS. But I actually got this trick like 2 times in runs from the like 130 runs I've done from this game, I think. Probably more than that. That's just any percent. I've done more than that, but I've got it twice on runs. Like real actual runs. One of those was a PV actually. I don't remember which one, but so there we do a Chaturga pull in the cutscene. You can actually do it somewhere else, but that's just a handy place to do it. And you see, you actually don't see the Chaturga symbol in Paul's head. That's an invisible pull. It's a little glitch that you can get when you cast a pull, and then on a specific frame window, you go into a transition.
Ah, Brother Luther, not a moment too soon.
But the pull is actually active, by the way. Like, you see my health there, the health meter? That's because I'm constantly recovering health. And that means the pull is there. It's just invisible. And, well, like I said before, the thing of the pull, about the pull, is that we have infinite stamina while we have pull, which is super handy here. You know, Paul has normal stamina. There's like just 2 amounts of stamina you can get on this game, either 10k or 30k. Paul is one of those 10k, and 30ks are actually just 3 characters. It's just Max, Karim, and Michael. Everyone else has lower stamina, and that means you cannot run forever. Like, Michael can run forever for sure, but this guy Paul, definitely not, and he runs a lot during the chapter. So we need to get some items. We get some bolts there because we're gonna use them with the crossbow. Crossbow was another one of those items that was fairly useless in the past, but now there's some tricks we can do with the crossbow on Paul. Very interesting tricks. There's a tiny bit of sneak there to make it here. So we need to waste a bullet, a bolt. We just do it there. and that's because we need an empty crossbow, because we need a reload. And the trick incoming, it's similar to Earn Skip on Anthony. You want to do a very long animation when you enter a door that has a cutscene in the next room. So you do the long animation, and then you need to do a no magic message right here. So no magic message. We do another one here, and with that we bypass the trigger. So you see, you normally see a cutscene when you get inside this room, but we avoid that cutscene, and that means Anthony is right here in the floor, just suffering. And then we do a damage field to wake him up immediately, and that saves some time on the second phase. So that's a very fast Anthony fight compared to the usual Anthony fight. Then we have to go back to the door, and the trigger is still there, and if you hit the trigger, you will softlock. So it's like, it's very scary, but there are strats to never get it. So yeah, so here we gotta kill some trappers. And a magical attack is way faster than using the crossbow. And then we need to change into the better equipment for this horror right here. There's a very tricky trick here. We have to kill 2 heads, and then we're 1 hit from killing the horror. We kill it, and at the same time you pause. And like, you have to pause after the bolt is shot. So then when you unpause, the bolt will hit the horror. And that allows you to have like player input in the cutscene. So then you can place the G well. You're gonna skip the horror animation, death cutscene. And then on the second UL, the Sapphire, you can time it in such a way that the cutscene of the Sapphire merges with the cutscene of the tomb opening. And here we need to get rid of the zombies. Those are very handy strats that I'm starting to use on any percent. These little passages with zombies actually allow for interesting strats that I enjoy using. And then we're gonna kill some zombies on the way back. We do it on the way back because that helps for stamina. There we got Pargon. You don't need to kill the zombie that has Pargon. You only need to make them sing. All of them will sing together. As soon as they sing, they are considered defeated by the game. So you just receive the room immediately. And then you see, there's no sanity effects here, but this is not because of explosion or any kind of manipulation. We are actually having a sanity effect. It's called Bleeding Walls. It's kind of a guaranteed sanity effect for Paul if you get everything done well up to the point where the sanity effect actives. And you're always gonna be between 50% sanity and 75% sanity. And when you are on that segment of sanity, you will always get only Bleeding Walls. And Bleeding Walls is one of the best sanity effects because it doesn't have any downside, and also it lasts forever. It lasts like 3 or 4 minutes, I don't remember exactly, but it lasts a lot. And while you have Bleeding Walls, you won't have other sanity effects.
Brother Andrew suspected
So
Augustine
all this
all
backtrack
along.
just to get the dagger. We definitely want a way to get that dagger early, but it seems so hard because it means we need to mess up with flags. Flags are like the one thing that is really hard to access in this game. We don't really have a way to directly access flags yet. So everything that uses flags for progression, it's always a hard thing to break for us. So I'm doing some explosions now, some recoveries, to avoid sanity effects. There's some assignments here, and some creations. We create all the 5 spells that we need, and one that we avoid is recovery. Reveal Invisible. Because we don't need 5 Reveal Invisible, and you're gonna see why on Ruperto. So we just completely avoid that. So every time I do a recovery that I just cancel immediately, that gives you about 10 seconds. I think it's like 9, but about 10 seconds of no sanity effects. And then after that, you're gonna trigger another one. So you have to keep canceling these recoveries unless you get a good sanity effect, which I think I got here, because then you can just keep that sanity effect and won't trigger others. And there's like another way to get no sanity effects at all, which is getting a no magic message with a recovery that gives you like 3 minutes, I think, free of sanity effects. Super good, but it needs you to deplete your entire magic. And also, like on a TAS, you can cancel the no magic message immediately, but on an RTA, you're gonna take some frames to do that.
You are a clever man.
Here we run up to the bone teeth, and if you get like very close to the wall there, the bone teeth, the jumping attack of the bone teeth won't work for some reason, and then you can like attack one of them, and like your sword, the attack of your sword gets cancelled on the wall, and you can do another attack immediately. You have to move a little bit towards it, but it's actually a very consistent strat if you get good at it. That's it for Paul. We're getting pretty ahead. So it's looking like a 1 hour 34 so far. I expect a lot more time save. So something I'm doing at the beginning of a lot of Alex segments is I'm canceling sanity effect, which is the to be continued sanity effect. You can just cancel that by either canceling a spell, casting a spell, or canceling it, or just by doing a recovery explosion. And then we got the page, but we are not done yet with this Alex segment. We need to go to the 2nd floor to do something very important. We're gonna get on this corner on the bathroom, and we're gonna summon a zombie. And I also did some assignments there, just to use the same pause, because why not? So this zombie is very important. This is the protagonist of this run. This zombie is gonna get into the bathroom, and then when it gets out, it's gonna push Alex out of bounds. And then Alex is gonna run towards the trigger of this cutscene. And voila! That allows you to skip Edward entirely. because this is what you normally do after Edward. We get the stethoscope. We're not going to use it yet, but we're going to use it later, after Peter. We're going to go from Peter to Michael immediately. And that trick is like very cool. It's honestly one of the easiest trick in the game. I kind of want to say thanks to developers, because for some reason that we don't know, developers just decide to like put a lot of walkable area, like a big walkable area, out of bounds. Because you know, on this game, normally when you go out of bounds, there is pretty much no collision at all. You just fall immediately, and there's always gravity on this game. It's always active. Well, except later, but I'm gonna talk about that later, don't worry. But let's say most of the time it's active, and you just fall into oblivion, into the eternal abyss, and there's no way to recover from there. You're fucked up. It's over forever. You can even save there, and if you load, you're gonna load down there, so it's over. But outside of those walls, just those specific walls, there is a lot of floor, and there's actually like the whole floor of the room. Like maybe at some point on beta or something, that room was planned to be load entirely on that same passage. So Roberto, the main difference so far is that we got the scythe, which is the saber of Roberto, and we're gonna use that later for something very interesting. If you watch my individual levels, you already know what I'm going to do here, or well, what the TAS is going to do. So I equip it there because we're gonna need it. We need to walk a little bit there for stamina. It's faster to walk with Roberto than to sneak for stamina. And here comes the interesting part. We need to get into an extremely precise position and angle on this room. And there's a very intricate setup here that I'm doing. It's consistent, but it's very hard. And then we do an on-target attack, and then the second on-target attack, we have a 2-frame window to trigger this matcher in such a way that if you're too late, this matcher kills you, and if you're too early, nothing happens. The cutscene won't get activated. And that's the only way we know to activate this matcher and like be alive after that. And it's very interesting because you saw me floating there, right there. So this is what we call a zombie hover for Eternal Darkness. So this matcher, right before it kills you, normally it activates a couple of states on the player. There's 2 main important things. One is that it gets rid of gravity. So right now we have no gravity. We're only going up because of the collision of the floor, but we're not going down. And the other thing that does is that it gets rid of enemy collision, so we can go through enemies. There's actually a strat here to float over the electricity, but it's like just slightly slower than just doing the shields. Here we get some height with that stair, and then we float here. There's a shield there that we do right before the cutscene, and when you do like spells right before the cutscene, a cutscene that has black bars, then after the cutscene you're gonna recover your magic if the runes are still on the floor. And here we're gonna hover some more to avoid pressing the lever. We go all the way back and around that wall because we can just float. Yo, the Cairo, how you doing? So those are like the main things we can do with zombie hover. We avoid pressing the lever and we avoid the reveal invisible because we just go over the bridge. And you saw me there. I went through some of the zombies. You're gonna see more of that later. There's a little bit of manipulation on the trapper there to make it explode. It's really hard to like make it explode without moving in that weird way. I just couldn't got it even on the TAS. Like I could have got it, but I just got bored of it and decided to just go for that little. It's just a tiny time loss. So here, right through the river. And then from this part, I need to start doing recovery cancels to avoid sanity effects. And then through the horror. And there's some interesting stuff on this room. We can go over this little wall because of the no gravity. Just some tiny time saves because of the zombie hover. And the zombie hover state will remain for this entire chapter, but sadly it will disappear after the chapter. Well, I say sadly, but there might be some parts where you get stuck and soft lock if you have zombie hover. It's like we have a lot of luck that it actually works on this chapter and it doesn't trigger any kind of soft lock, you know? It's like very important. And it's definitely faster than the usual or the old road, which is with reveal invisible. So now we're ready for Peter. Do you have plans on a hybrid heaven any percent run again in the future? Kinda. I want to go back to hybrid heaven at some point, but it's complicated because I need to put a lot of time into that run, into that game, to like recover my level. And the community isn't really active right now, whereas the Eternal Darkness community is a little bit more active. So that's like the main reason why I'm playing Eternal right now. But I do want to go back to hybrid at some point, especially because there's so many categories I haven't done yet because they are too hard, so I haven't completed runs of those. So it might happen, for sure. I just don't know when. So, we wasted one flashbang there because we need an empty flashbang for an incoming trigger bypass. We're gonna use the same technology we use on Paul for the Anthony fight here. No magic message, reload into another no magic message. So that way we move during that cutscene. There's a little cutscene there on the nurse getting attacked by the bone thieves. Then a little bit of sneak here. And here we need to summon a trapper to get rid of a body of a corpse. And there's like a very weird frame window here that you can do the attack and then cancel the trapper and avoid the dead animation of the trapper. It's a weird frame window because it's between 2 and 7 frames, but you don't actually know which window you're gonna have because it depends on a world timer. The only consistent part is the 2 frame part. Then assignments here. These were a little bit sloppy, I gotta say, even for... Like, I try to do them humanly, you know? Because if you go full TIS on the menu, things get pretty insane and, like, just so much faster than humans that is, like, not very... it's like, not a good comparison anymore. Lights back. And the 7 spells we got are like the same 7 spells we got on on my PV. There's a spell on this cutscene. It's not that hard to get that, and it saves a bunch of time. Even while we don't finish the spell in the cutscene, we save a lot of the time of casting the spell. So we're gonna get this, and then there is a little bit of sneak for stamina, because magic is kind of tight on this chapter, and also not just that, but it's kind of just faster to sneak a little bit instead of doing a pull, and also we need to do a Celta pull, so we cannot just do a Shatura pull instead. This pull is very important because it allows us to don't lose a lot of health, because enemies will do health damage when they look at you if you don't have sanity, but as long as you have 1 sanity, they will do sanity damage. Even if they normally do like a massive damage of sanity. So I spent pretty much all my bullets on trappers, and that's very handy because with an empty revolver we can start doing this funny animation on the doors that avoids turning around on the next room. We don't really need the gun for this Black Guardian, so it's fine. The only Black Guardian that needs the gun to be faster is the Chaturga one. It's the only one that benefits. And that's only because that's the only Black Guardian that we need to defeat. But this one, we actually don't need to defeat it. We won't defeat this Guardian. Yeah, this is gonna be like kind of a weird timeline where the Black Guardian just rests here. Either that or Peter finishes up without us looking. So zombie here. Why am I summoning a zombie? Remember Lindsay? And the portable walls? Well, now we also have portable zombies, so we can do stuff like this. And you just clip into the wall. The trick is roughly hard, but it has a very good backup on when you play the game, which takes a lot of time, by the way. So we just got it on the first try here, of course. And I forgot a split, but I'm just gonna do it there, whatever. So you saw me canceling a spell at the beginning of Alex. Remember that was for the to be continued, to avoid that, because we don't have recovery right now assigned, so I need to cancel that with another method. Getting the shotgun here. That's for later. One of the strongest weapons in the game, actually. Shotgun is insanely strong on this game. It's crazy how strong it is. And with this we can just go to Michael. Oh wait, there's one thing we gotta do before Michael, and it's using the penny. And that's just for later. And of course some assignments. Got recovery back. And we go down Oyaf pool because Michael doesn't have a lot of magic. He might have a lot of stamina, but he doesn't have a lot of magic. So we're gonna need a pool. And using the penny right there, it's mandatory because we need it for the end. Yeah, the penny is an unintended item, and if we reach Pious with an unintended item, the game will crash when you open the inventory on Pious. So to avoid that crash, we need to get rid of the penny, even while we're not going to actually use it, you know, for its intended purpose. We just need to get rid of it. So all these items, I'm getting them with fast pickups, which is putting your character between the item and the camera so it doesn't pan towards the item. And then here there's an interesting trick on the light puzzle. We're gonna skip about half of this light puzzle. So that first part is not skippable, but this one, I'm gonna go here, get a no tone message into a pre-render cutscene that allows you to move and finish this, and then you can move on this cutscene and just go into the slab during the cutscene, and that saves a little bit of time. But it's kind of scary if you do it in a run. There's a very easy soft lock, but there is a strat to avoid it. It's just a tiny bit slower, but still saves time. It's just that the camera makes the movement very hard. If you, let's say, you want to get the fastest one. So lots of recoveries from pretty much every room to avoid sanity effects. We want to be full magic on this part incoming. So you wait a little bit and then you summon a trapper. You need to wait because otherwise the zombie will cancel your spell. And then you can press start right after the trapper attacks to cancel the animation. Then we use upside down sanity effect to our advantage to cast another pool, because when you cast things inside a sanity effect, one that loads the room again, all your stats will be the same as they were before. So we actually don't waste magic for that pool. But the pool lasts. And then this part, this is the best part, because give me a second. This fight is completely random, and you saw that was pretty fast. Normally that takes a lot of time on 8%, or let's say it's an unpredictable amount of time. Like that fight was probably like 7 seconds, I guess. That fight takes on average 27 seconds on all Youth. But if you're really unlucky and the game really doesn't like you, that fight can go up to 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's like the longest fight I've got. And it's just a run killer that we cannot control, you know? This is like it's one of the biggest RNG in the run, I would say, because there's not an alternative to that, and there's no way to control it. I just have to do that same spell like over and over and over when I did the TAS to get good RNG, and that's the reason why you saw me like targeting on the horror. That was to change the RNG and try different like RNGs to get a good fight. So here we need to do a Celta pull, because otherwise you run out of health. But like I said before, just like in Peter, one Celta pull pretty much makes you invincible to sanity damage. Immune, let's say, to sanity damage. Otherwise you might run on low health, unlike the horrors here, the incoming horrors, because they do a lot of sanity damage and that translates into half damage in health. Alright, so let's see how good was my horror fight in my PV. Look at that time save, nice. So looking like a 1 hour 32. And there's still some time save on like this last segment of Alex and the Pious fight. There is like a lot of time save here still. Alright, cancel the spell there. That was the last to be continued, to be skipped. And then here, I just got that sanity effect, and that was pretty handy because that's gonna give me some free time without sanity effects. And the main difference on Alex, again, just like Roberto, if you have seen my individual levels, you know what's going to happen here. But if you haven't, what I can tell you is that we're going to skip like a very important part of Enga. Well, not that very important, but like a part of Enga using a very interesting glitch. Why are you lowering the volume? Yeah. What does it look like a 90s TV? I actually have one of those. It's funny because my CRT, the one that I use for speedrun, when I speedrun the game, it has that exact same volume thing. It's so funny. So it's like completely accurate to see it on the CRT. So we're gonna do a shield here. We do it on this place because that way we recover some stamina when we're casting, while we're casting. Then an assignment and a scroll trick to open that. Because we need to open that before getting into Enga, otherwise the game thinks you don't have the artifact. Yeah, Dennis predicted that I would play on our CRT. That we speedrunners, we really like those like original frames. We don't like latency, so I think a lot of speedrunners speedrun on CRTs because of that. Similar to like melee players that play on CRT because of frame perfect stuff and that. I just do it for the nostalgia. There's not a lot of frame perfect tricks on this game, but there is a couple. But it's mostly because I just have the CRT and it looks pretty good there. It might not look that great on the capturer software, but in the CRT it looks amazing. So here you're just getting the power back to start Enga. Remember, this is the first time we get to Enga because we skip Edward altogether. It's one of the cool things about the speedrun right now is that you play Enga just once. As good as Edward chapter is, it's kind of like it gets a little bit boring to play Enga so much on the speedrun. And like Edward is just running on Enga, so yo, how you doing, short boy? Yeah, I'm doing pretty alright. How are you doing? So this spell there. So the movement on Enga is done in such a way, like there is a whole roading process. So we will need to cast shields every time we need stamina. Okay? So that way we pretty much never have to sneak for stamina or like do a Chaturga pull or things to recover stamina. Everything is like well thought in that matter. We're going to trigger that trapper. That's a very scary thing. I would never do that on a run actually. I usually just run around it on actual runs. And here's the most important part of Enga. We can do some target running here, just pressing R while you run with a certain rhythm to avoid the worm. Then we're gonna summon a trapper. Why is that? Because the trapper is going to activate the worm. But we need to deactivate the trapper on a 1 frame. It's a 1 frame window. If you get it too early, you just get rid of the trapper and go back to Alex. If you get it too late, the worm, let's say, kind of kills the trapper, and you also get back to Alex later. But if you get it on that 1 frame, then you go back to Alex, but you still have the worm, like the sepia effect of that room. So if you don't remember what happens on that room, when the worm looks at you, you get this sepia effect and you get stuck in the room. There's like a damage field, a barrier, and you cannot get out of it. That trapper right there is also very scary, but that one's more consistent. I can do that on runs. So you get stuck in the room, and the only way to get out of that is recover all your sanity. It's like up to 75%, I think, something like that. And then when you get that, you're gonna see the flashing of sanity effect, and you're gonna get warped to the beginning of the room. Okay, that's what normally happens. But now what we did is we summoned the trapper farther away from the barrier. So when we go back to Alex, we're farther away from the barrier and we can get out of the room. And we still have the worm warp effect that we call. So if my sanity goes over 80% or 75%, we're gonna see that effect happening on another room. And what the effect actually does is it teleports you back to the default position in any room, okay? So we're gonna use that later. Here, I just watch a cutscene because that, for some reason, deactivates this barrier. That's the only barrier in the game that does that. It's very, very handy. That saves like a minute, because otherwise, there's the bestiary room there, or Su room, where you have to summon a bunch of creatures to open the barrier. it's like a lot of time consuming thing summoning all those creatures. Yeah, there is the main thing about like plasmas and modern TVs compared to CRTs is usually a latency. I know there's some models that don't have that problem, but a lot of modern TVs have some latency issues and like tiny delay, some frames on old games. Okay, so we still have the thing. We haven't used it yet. And actually, we're gonna use that like at the end of Enga. So we're stuck with this Sebi effect for a while. That's totally fine. It kind of looks like a timeline visitation, the sanity effect. What kind of software is necessary for a precise run? I use Dolphin, which is the GameCube and Wii emulator. Dolphin has some very handy tools for TAS, for tool-assisted speedruns. Basically, depending on what game you want to play, any emulator that has like save states, you need like save states, frame advance, and like recording the inputs. And there's a bunch of emulators that do that for different consoles. Dolphin happens to have a tool. So basically, what's going on right now, I'm actually playing this back on the emulator, okay? This is not a quote-unquote video of the run. This is the emulator playing the inputs that I did on the TAS, you know? So like, the emulator is playing the game right now. This is not a video. This is not edited or anything. Here there's more Trapper scary strats. And there's gonna be more Trappers on this incoming room. Here I need to go for some target running. So you see Alex running in a funny way. That's because I'm pressing R with a certain rhythm. Makes the Trapper think that you are not actually running, because you don't complete the animation of running, and allows you to, it's like a very fast way to sneak, let's say. It's very handy with Trappers. We're gonna use it one more time here on the next Spire. So here, there's like a lot of it, because this part, there's 3 Trappers. And that's like totally RTA viable. It's something I started to practice now. I did it on my individual levels. And I'm going to start doing that on runs, because what I used to do is I used to use the revolver on some of the Trappers. And we also used to cast a lot of magical attacks when there's too many Trappers. But doing a target running, it's like way faster. So, did you notice I had a Celta pool here? That's to recover sanity. We need to recover sanity up to a high point. Like I said before, it's like 75%. And we need to have, like, we need our sanity to go up in a certain room, up that threshold, okay? And that's why we use the pool, because it's kind of puts a timer into the glitch, you know, into the trick. We're gonna make it into the next room just in time, so it doesn't activate here, but in the next room, okay? And you're gonna see why I want it here. This is a room where you're supposed to use bind to make the horrors kill their friends. But here I'm just gonna cast a shield while I wait for the effect. And that's the thing, that's the warm warp. We are so lucky that developers decide to make the default entrance of that room at the other side of the room. So we just teleport to the entrance, you know? And there's a no magic message to avoid 1 electricity. So we can make it here without getting damage. And then into Pious. It's looking pretty good. It's looking like a 31. I wonder if I can be... It can be a 30. It might be the case. We'll see. Because there's a big time save here on Pious. But I don't know how big it is. Because it depends on how good my Japanese PB was. So for this fight, this is like one of the most RNG intensive fights in the game, along with the, you know, like the Michael horrors. Every time you hit Pious, the artifact appears. Then you hit the artifact, and you get a ghost state. And then with the ghost, you have to hit the artifact again. But the thing is, the artifact can decide to appear on this circle that we are on right now, or in the other circle that is very, very far away. We kind of know a way to control that a little bit, but it's not fully consistent. It's more of a increase the probability thing. So I actually spent a lot of time on this fight just getting this insane pattern that is pretty much impossible to get in runs. Like, you gotta get so lucky for this to work. Like, the farthest I got on runs was like, I think here after Max into Paul, and then Paul I got the farther artifact, but this is like so insanely fast compared to an average run. And then we're done. That's it. It's like so fucking fast. And now I can input a pause before this cutscene, 1 frame before the cutscene, and then we do animation cancels to kill Pious with the shotgun, unenchanted shotgun. That's because every time you equip and unequip the shotgun, you reset your animation and you can shoot again immediately. So we can kill Pious before he finishes the spell. And time is coming. There.
That's the ticket.
And it's a 130 actually. Nice. That's pretty good. I honestly didn't expect it to be so low. I expected like a 132, more or less. And remember, emulator is consistently slower than console. Like, loading times are consistently slower, always. Which means that in console, at a run like this, I think it can go like below 130. It's just my estimation. Like, just by seeing on the time loss on Pious, you know, it was like 1 second, but that was an optimal Pious. So there's definitely a bunch more seconds on, let's say, chapters with more loading zones, you know. Thanks for the GG's. GG's for Dolphin Emulator. And me for doing the TIS. And Sir for discovering most of the stuff of this game. And of course, shoutouts to the community for being supporting.
At once I could not see beyond the veil of reality.
And everyone else that sees this later on YouTube, because this is gonna be on YouTube. I'm doing a local recording, so it's gonna have even better quality. And I think the TIS is like about to finish right now. Let's see. Oh no, there's one more thing that needs to happen. The secret ending, right? Oh no, I canceled that, I think. No, there's no secret ending because I didn't do the yeah, that's like a last detail. Let me recover. We're going to recover control here. Okay, there you go. So TIS is over. So that's something I forgot to mention at the beginning. But now on any percent, we go for like the when the game asks you whether you want the previous information of the memory card on your next run or your next playthrough. We now say no, and the only difference that makes that is that you don't get all the cutscenes at the beginning, and like I guess probably you don't. I guess you don't get the autopsies. I'm not sure, but also it gets rid of 2 zombies on Kareem, and it's like the tiniest time save, but it's something, you know. But I think that also cancels the secret ending. I'm not entirely sure though. Like I have the feeling that I've seen it anyways. Maybe I just canceled it in the TIS. Who knows? I don't remember. But yeah, today we use that strat on no cutscene storage, because if you go for cutscene storage, the other category, you actually want to have you want to have all the cutscenes already, because that's you need those, you know. So yeah, that was it. I'm pretty happy that this worked out. You know, when I was doing the TIS, there was some parts where I think I hit a wrong save state. But I didn't actually put any inputs on it. Like I recovered the good save state in time without doing inputs in the wrong one. Because if you do that, you might hit a desync, and then from there the run is just like it's garbage. Because if you get one desync, then when the emulator is playing the run back, it's playing the inputs. So if you're desynced 1 frame, that's enough to mess up all the inputs for the rest of the game. And I was very afraid of that. But it actually worked out. That same day where I finished the TIS after the stream, like I let the TIS running in the background at like 300 speed, and I just leave it there. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go back, and if it is on the last screen, then we're good, you know. So I went back like 30 minutes after, and it was on the last screen. So even while I haven't watched this is the first time I watched it entirely, I actually knew it was like going to work. Yeah, otherwise I don't think I would have streamed it. Like imagine getting up the sync on like half of the run in the middle of the stream. That would be so bad. And yeah, so thank you everyone that watched it live, and thank you everyone that is going to watch it later. Remember, this is like a very good game to speedrun. If you like horror games, I personally think this is the best horror game to speedrun, at least of the old ones. It has a lot of cool stuff, and it's very fun to speedrun. And now with this, now that I have a good idea of how far the run can go, I'm ready to go back to 80%. Because I have kind of an old PV at this point, and I want to beat it. I have to beat it. It's just too old. Alright. That's it for tonight. Because I have to go eat something. So, bye bye everyone. You got the itch and it needs to be scratched. yeah, of course. Need more PVs, of course. Like, this was kind of a good pause. I haven't done runs in a while for a couple of reasons. The main reason was because I was a little bit like overwhelmed by the new stuff. The last streaks were a little bit too hard, and it was kind of stressing to do the last PV. But now I'm in a way more relaxed state because I went into the individual levels and I did all those hard tricks. So now I have a better understanding of them, and I also think I have better more endurance towards frustration, I guess, because I understand them more. So it doesn't feel like just the game is teasing me, but like I know what I have to do, you know. So this gives me like a good comeback period for 8%. I had to take the war record from Winchalon in Blood Omen. They had to push it lower and lower. Yeah, Winchalon, he actually played both Blood Omen and Eternal Darkness. You know, like before I arrived here on Eternal Darkness, he was one of the top runners along with Swyken. I always say this, that I really think, like, I'm really sad that Winchalon never actually got the record, because he was so close to the Swyken PV. He deserved the record because he pushed some bit. He even did an 80% tutorial at some point, so yeah, and I just remember, like, when I was looking at his channel, like when I started getting into this game, I remember watching a bunch of Winchalon runs, just because they had like better quality than Swyken. And also Winchalon, I think he commented more stuff about the game too, because he had the 80% tutorial and all that. So, and I remember when I did that, I watched, there was some of the Blood Omen stuff on his channel. Yeah, good stuff. Hopefully we get something about Winchalon. I haven't heard of him in a while. He's still on the Discord, but doesn't talk a lot. The same about Swyken, and I guess the old runners, but whatever. It'll happen someday, I guess. These are all old, like rare images of the game. I always put this on my kind of BRB or conversation. He taught me a lot of Blood Omen that I ended up finding things. We lowered those runs a bit. Nice. From last I heard, he's being really busy with work. Okay, yeah, it happens a lot. That's like a very common thing with speedrunners. Like, you have a period of time where you're like really active, and then because you get so busy or whatever, you have to step away, because speedrunning, it takes a lot of time. Even if you're not streaming, just practicing running and all that, it's a bunch of time. Like, I hear from a lot of people that now have children, they pretty much don't have any time to speedrun. There was actually a thing, I think with Old Squab, I'm not sure if it was him or someone else, that got children back on the SDA time, when runs used to be segmented. And one of the reasons that runner, I think it was Old Scott, but I'm not really sure, but one of the things that runner went into segmented runs was because of their child, because they just couldn't got like a 2-hour segment. The run was like 2 hours something back in the day. You know, without being annoyed by a children that you have to take care of. But you can take those little like 10-minute segments, I guess. You have to earn your own, and it makes it hard. Yeah, I see. Yeah, it definitely is, of course. Especially with longer games, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's like the thing. Yeah. Like Eternal Darkness, it got lower right now. All thanks to Edward's skip and other skips. So it's below 2 hours. That's at least that's good. But like hell, I think, you know, there's games like Skates of Arcadia, which is like 12, 14 hours, and that's 80%. And it's like, I can't do that, and I don't have children, and I don't plan to have any, but I just can't do that because I need to like go to the bathroom and eat. I mean, I know they do that in the run, but still. Yeah. Yeah, there's very short games, and it's very different to go from different games. I used to play my very first speed game was Ocus Pocus, which is a DOS game. It's very old, and that game has runs of like 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes on different categories, and the pace is so different. Like, you also like, I feel like with those games, I used to have longer streams because no matter how late you are on the stream, there's like always time for another run. You know, it's just 10 more minutes, or even more if you're visiting. But with games like this, okay, you have a long stream, and then if you want to do another run, you need like another 2 hours, and you're thinking like, no, but that's gonna be too late, so you actually don't do another run, and you have to manage your time more, way more with longer games. So yeah. Hey, good to have you here, Barik. And now I'm gonna go because I'm actually hungry. So. Yeah. Okay. You have a good night too. So, bye bye.